Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Canadian Football Fanatics. And this is the BC Lions post-game recap show. That was a ugly one, folks. The BC Lions fall to 5-3 on the season, dropping tonight's contest to the Winnipeg Bluebombers 25-0. Yes, that is correct. A 25-0 shutout for the Winnipeg Bluebombers. Just overall, very, very tough night for the BC Lions, who for back-to-back weeks now have not looked great. Coming off the bye week, losing to Calgary. Now they get shut out here tonight. Vernon Adams leaves the game with injury. A lot of questions to be had if you're a BC Lions fan and or supporter. So I'm curious to see how things are going to turn out, especially after this game. I would imagine, there's going to be a lot of questions post-game with how, Vernon Adams is doing. The defense had a pretty good effort there, but it's unfortunate to try to. It sounds like I'm criticizing them a little bit, just because of the lack of any sort of um, meaning on this game from the offense. The defense almost had to have made a play to either get them into scoring possession, which they did there. I believe actually it wasn't even credit to the defense. I believe the defense got a stop, and one of the bad punts by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers punter ended up going out around midfield or so. If the Lions get a first down or two, they're in field goal range for sure. Weren't able to capitalize on that, and it was just a mistake all night. Um, that was tough to watch, quite frankly. But we'll get into it here as we go on to the show, folks. Let me just try to set everything up here as we go along. Let me turn this down first of all, so you guys don't have to hear that. But this is going to be a tough one, but it's going to be a short one tonight, folks. We're not going to have honestly not much to really recap. I believe the Lions had what is it, 9 punts here total? Let's see as we go through the stats. Um, yeah, just tough. Going through some of these stats. So the one that jumps out to me right away is the Bombers having 42 minutes time of possession to the BC Lions 18 minutes. So the defense was on the field for quite a bit of the game. The offense was was really doing nothing out there in terms of first downs. I believe they mustered together. Let's see here. 4 total first downs on the night, with 3 rushing and 1 passing. So a tough one to handle, a tough one to swallow. Especially after the bye week, losing to Calgary the way they did. I would have thought that they would have been motivated to come out of the bye week here and get a win in the win column. Keep Winnipeg down and try to traject themselves into you know leapfrogging Saskatchewan or just keeping pace with Saskatchewan this week. Off the top of my head, let me just check here who Saskatchewan is playing quickly. Edmonton. You can pretty much chalk that up to a victory right away. So Saskatchewan's going to get a 1-game lead right away. I know, on the weekly show, Shane mentioned about this kind of being a must-win game. He thought for the BC Lions. I don't know if I can go that far, considering the Lions are still 5-3. Um, in a little bit of a slump right now, but I don't think it's time to really press the panic button. If it was maybe a season-ending injury for Vernon Adams, then I could get on that training. But I really think he's going to be all right in maybe a few weeks here. We've kind of seen this from Vernon Adams here. Last year we saw with the knee, he missed some time. I believe he missed a game. I believe it was actually versus Edmonton Elks as well. I believe it was the Dane Evans game. He started Dane Evans. I believe shut out the Elks last season. So I would not be surprised if in 10 days we see Jake Delagala get the start, lead the BC Lions into Edmonton, because nothing's guaranteed. There's a reason why they play the games, but I would imagine the winless Edmonton Elks will drop to 0-8 on the season after the game one versus Saskatchewan this Saturday, and then I feel like not to look over any opponent in professional football, but you can kind of feel confident if you're the Lions to start Jake Delagala, to at least give you an opportunity to win in Edmonton. And I think it would be fair to press the panic button if the Lions weren't able to get it done in Edmonton. The Elks are a desperate team right now. I think they're going to play well, but I think this is a game that you need to win now. This might be entering must win territory here when you know, play Edmonton, I believe. Then we see Winnipeg at home, and then it's the back to backs with Ottawa, who's looking very good. So I think these are this is as close as it gets to a must win game here for BC next week versus Edmonton. But let's get into the post game show as I try to fix the little header quickly. But give me a second here, folks. There we go. I'll throw that up for you very quickly. All right, there we go. Let's get into this game recap a little bit. All right. So the Lions shut out. Like I mentioned, not much to really recap here from a Lions perspective. So we're gonna kind of make things a little bit shorter on the show here tonight. Skipped a majority of the recap because the Lions offense did not have much going on, like I mentioned. I believe they started the game with I think it was 5 straight 2-and-outs. Was a ridiculous, comical amount of 2-and-outs from both sides there in the first half. I thought the defense, you know, we'll get into a little bit and kind of my likes and dislikes here after the game recap. But I thought the defense held the team in the game for majority of the game up until, you know, the late third quarter there. But they can only do so much there on the field. Like I said, 42 minutes out of a 60-minute ball game, absolutely ridiculous, unacceptable. I believe at halftime it was 20 and a half minutes to 9.5 minutes time possession for Winnipeg over BC. So, you know, kind of went back and forth on Twitter with a few people of, you know, Vernon Adams and you know, I believe the majority of their opinions are coming from, you know, outside perspectives, people that aren't Lions fans, but, you know, CFL watchers, supporters. So, you know, they're watching weekly CFL games, stuff like that. And, you know, they said, you know, more often than not, which I agree with, you can kind of see from the jump that, you know, Vernon Adams is unfortunately in one of those games or maybe in one of those headspaces, having one of those games is more correct to put it. And it's just so strange, so weird because of you know, for the previous, I'd say, you know, 6 games, or I guess it's not, yeah, 6 games, 7 weeks with the bye, you know, Vernon Adams has looked great. CFL MOP front runner without a doubt. But then, you know, Calgary um, doesn't look great here tonight once again. I believe let me just quickly check here before I tune back out. So Vernon Adams' stat line is going to read 8 completions for 17 attempts, 74 yards, and an interception, 1 carry for 1 yard. So very tough night at the office for Vernon Adams Jr. You know, I know people love to do the whole on pace thing. This is going to really hurt his on pace percentages, which don't matter at the end of the day. I still think BA is going to finish the season strong. I think he's going to snap out of this, but you know, I've said it all the way to last year. People that are, you know, supporters of the channel have kind of followed along since last season doing the post game shows. I've said it all along of my worry with Vernon Adams is not, you know, in the regular season. It's more so in the big moments when it matters, when it's in a West Final, when it's in a Grey Cup sort of thing, when it's, you know, on the line to go to a home Grey Cup. Is Vernon Adams going to show up and put his best foot forward? You know, we saw in Winnipeg the last couple of years getting to a West Final. He you know, isn't able to, you know, muster the same kind of you know, game, or just isn't able to replicate the game that he's been played that he had played all season. Now we come to this year, he's obviously been playing so well. People are riding high there early in the season, and then we've kind of hit this bump in the road. I think where this bump in the road is kind of what I you know, ups and downs, peaks and valleys. Like I said, I expect BA to bounce back, but my biggest concern is just that can Vernon Adams get out of his head in the big time moments? You know, this year I really feel like the BC Lions are on track to have that West Final, hopefully in BC place. Let's all cross our fingers. And if that's able to, you know, happen, I feel like, is the pressure too much that, you know, that place is going to be as close to as a sellout as I would imagine as possible. The people will definitely sense the meaning of that game and what could be at stake if the Lions are able to win that one, punch their ticket to a home Grey Cup once again. What is it, 14 years or 13 years later. So big time opportunity on our hands here, on BC's hands here. And I worry that, is Vernon Adams mentally ready to do that? I feel like it's not really skill. It's when he gets in his own head and he starts to, maybe question himself, start to second guess some of his decision making. I know there was, a few opportunities there when he had some time that, Glenn Suter kind of touched on it on the broadcast that, he was obviously getting some pressure. There was a lot of guys in his face. Willie Jefferson showed up once again. I believe, what was the total sacks on the night? He did get taken down a few times. He was definitely getting roughed up, but so Winnipeg had 4 sacks. Willie Jefferson, like I mentioned, knocking down some passes. But that being said, there was some opportunities for him to, sit in the pocket, sit in a nice clean pocket, and go through his reads. For whatever reason, not having access to, all 22 angle, not really seeing it much else other than the broadcast angle. You know, uh, Maybe he just didn't, for whatever reason, it's unfortunate for quarterback. Just a lot of circumstances come into play on any given play. So maybe his eyes went to the left and he had something open on his right. Maybe he just second guessed himself and didn't want to pull the trigger in some of those tight windows, which he's been doing all year. So a lot of factors come into play there. It's just weird to see Vernon Adams in this state right now, and then obviously he leads the game with a knee injury, and we're hoping him well. So we will kind of end the Vernon Adams talk there for now and quickly go through the rest of the game from a Bombers perspective because BC, like I mentioned, didn't do much. So going through the game, Winnipeg was able to take a 3-0 lead on a Sergio Castillo field goal that went off the left upright and bounced in, and probably should have been the writing on the wall there early that the Winnipeg was going to get all the bounces here, and it wasn't BC's day. So 3-0 early lead for Winnipeg in the first quarter. It stuck until the start of the second quarter, where Winnipeg's drive from the end of the first quarter continued into the second quarter, and Castillo kicked a bomb. I believe it's his second 60-yard field goal this season, which is super impressive, and is a big-time weapon if he can be accurate. I know he's struggled somewhat throughout the season, but if he's able to be accurate, I feel like it's a big-time weapon for the Bombers to have, especially because he's a veteran. He's been used to kicking in that stadium in the playoffs in big-time moments, especially for the Bombers. So curious to see how that continues to work. He, I believe, went pretty good on the night. I want to say he kicked 6 field goals. Might have went 6 for 6. I don't remember him missing many field goals off the top of my head. Let's see. 6'4", Sergio Castillo with a long of 60. Sixes are running wild, with Winnipeg taking a 6-0 lead there early on in the second quarter. And Lions really doing nothing overall until after half. Lucky Whitehead got a late touchdown for the Winnipeg Bluebombers to take a 13-0 lead, which was maybe a moment I guess we could touch on quickly. Happy to see Lucky get back into the lineup, his first game playing this season after obviously not being picked up all offseason. Gets picked up by the Winnipeg Bluebombers, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. Spent some time on the practice roster, getting back familiar with the playbook, stuff like that. I would imagine getting somewhat into shape. I know he's probably stayed in shape, but getting back into game shape, probably smart of the Bombers, because you saw tonight he was able to have an impact. Cut a touchdown. I don't know what his we'll see what his final numbers are here. I want to say they're not bad. 6 for 6, 56 yards and a touchdown. So not great, but not very, very respectable numbers. I think considering he's first game this season, I think good sign for the Winnipeg Bluebombers, and probably a weapon that they can utilize here down the stretch without not having. I know Kenny Lawler's on schedule to come back here in a few weeks, but not having a guy like Dalton Schoen, I was honestly surprised. I know I heard is it the Winnipeg Sports Talk fellow? I forget his name. Hustler mentioned that he was surprised that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers didn't go after Rashid Bailey, which I was too. But then I thought back to kind of the timing of it. They just had signed Lucky Whitehead on the practice roster. They had had a plan for him to get accustomed to the playbook, stuff like that, and then get him into the lineup. So I think it kind of makes sense not going after Rashid Bailey. And I think it paid off for them well tonight with Lucky Whitehead having an impact. He was able to score the first touchdown and quite possibly, yes, the only touchdown of the game for for either team. So Winnipeg went into the locker room up 13-0, which was, you know, probably the only positive for BC on the game, to be honest, because they went in the locker room after playing so bad, only down 2 possessions, with an opportunity to get right back in the lead. And they get in the second half. Winnipeg has the ball first, and the Bombers aren't able to do anything with it and end up going 2-and-out. BC ends up taking over possession, go 2-and-out once again, and I believe this was a second bad punt by the Bombers punter. Ended up giving BC pretty good field position, good enough field position where I believe they went 2-and-out BC. If not, maybe they picked up one of their first downs there, and then ended up bringing out the field goal unit, Sean White and the boys to kick a field goal. No, folks, he did not lose his consecutive field goal streaks because it is considered a punt. They tried a onside field goal, is what I'm going to call it, but it ends up, I guess, being an onside punt, which makes sense, I guess, with just kind of an onside punt being held, which is a little bit unique to see. But that is the CFL, which is cool to see. And probably another play that was, really one that just was a sign of things to come, that it just wasn't the Lions' way to go. I'm not too sure I believe it was number 47, if he was, a special teams guy, defensive back, something like that. But when he's coming down with the ball, when Justin McInnes is in the area, yeah, I think that shows Justin, for whatever reason, he tries to, try to body catch it or cradle it instead of going up high, which I think if he goes up high, he's probably able to snag it before it drops over him and into the hands of the Bombers defender getting the ball. So let's get back into the post-game show as the Bombers recover the ball on the onside punt attempt by the Lions, continuing to just show no life offensively. And they end up kicking a field goal, getting their first points of the second half, and making it 16-0, which is just, again, the defense continuing to keep them in the game. I believe they had a 3rd-and-1 stop there early in the game that I'd love to highlight, but just kind of, it's unfortunate because they played well, but they just weren't able to make any big plays, which I've been kind of critical of them, if you will, all season, of that secondary being a half step behind. Of last year we saw them get a lot of takeaways, taking the ball away on a consistent basis. This year we haven't seen the same uptick since last year, which a lot of turnover, which is maybe you could point to that for why the Lions haven't been able to take the ball away. But I feel like the Lions secondary as well is just hasn't been in position as well as they were last year, and I think they're usually a step or two behind, and I would like to see them get corrected. I'm sure Ryan Phillips has been hammering in film of them trying to correct that and trying to get them to be a little bit more of playmakers, and trying to get their offense more opportunities. But I think on a night like this, when your offense isn't going, yes, you got the 3rd-and-1 stop there early on. And I believe it was in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, early on in the second quarter. I think you need something. You need a turnover of some sort. You have a guy like Gary Peters that's in the boundary. He has to make a play. I know a few times, he got beat on the over route. Glenn Suter tried to somewhat put the blame on Christophe Bayou. I think that's just, yes, he needs to be helped over the top, but he wasn't beaten so over the top that he needed to get involved there. I think that's a play Gary Peters needs to stay in stride a little bit more, stay on his hip, and not really lose separation there. So just good effort from the BC Lions defense, but not enough, I guess, is probably a good way to put it. And the Lions continue to go 2-and-out once again in the second half. Bombers taking over 19-0 with another field goal drive. Shocker, another 2-and-out from the Lions. Winnipeg ends up continuing a drive for their 5th field goal. That was the end of the 3rd quarter into the 4th quarter, taking a 22-0 lead. Vernon Adams was hurt and left the game there in the 4th quarter. I want to say with about 10 or so minutes to go in the game. Jake Dolegala came in the game. Lucky for him, it was a 2nd-and-19. He completed a pass underneath to Alexander Hollins, and 3rd down, they ended up trying to go for it as well. and aren't able to pick up the first down. And that pretty much iced the game from there. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers kicked a late field goal to make it 25-0. And that was your final from there. So let's get into some game recap here, or excuse me, end the game recap and get into some dislikes. Because I'll be honest, folks, there's not a lot of likes here on the show here tonight. Going to be hard to find a game ball as well to give out. But like I said, let's start with the dislikes here first. We're gonna go with hard to really start with anything. We're gonna save Vernon Adams for the end of the show. We're gonna go with the defensive line here first. The addition, obviously, of Christian Covington in the late offseason. I believe he was signed somewhere around maybe May, maybe late April, somewhere around there. Has really been disappointing so far through 8 games, 9 weeks. Has been basically invisible. I believe outside of a garbage time sack, still a sack, still gonna, at the end of the season, it's not gonna be, one sack in the stat category with, brackets, garbage time sack. It's still credited as the same as the sack, but really hasn't generated much pressure. I don't have any access to, other film or able to, sometimes the broadcast angle isn't the greatest for the defensive line, especially those guys in the interior, right? Sometimes they get blocked out by, the guys on the edge, stuff like that. So without having to watch film and seeing how much of an impact truly he's had, because I think a great example is a guy like Josh Banks, who is one of the one of the more underrated guys, I feel like, in the CFL, who does a lot of things quietly that, his teammates see on, the film and his opponents see on the film that respect him. But fans like us and stuff like that aren't able to see, what he's able to actually do during a game. So maybe Christian's having a little more impact than I'm giving him credit for. But that being said, I think with the pedigree, him being a 7-8 year NFL veteran, I understand kind of adjusting to the game. But his pops played in the CFL. I would imagine they've had some conversations of um, you know what not to do, kind of. And obviously everyone's different, so for Grover to tell Christian, don't do this because I couldn't do it, I feel like is not accurate. But hey, this is kind of what worked for me. Maybe these are some things you should try. The Christian mentioned about getting lighter had nothing to do with the CFL, but maybe his dad tells him, maybe you should bulk up a little bit because of I played at a little bit heavier weight, whatever it may be. I'm not saying that was the case. I'm just saying I would think his dad gave him a little bit of, a rundown of kind of, how the CFL works. Obviously, he played in the CFL 30 or so years ago there in the early 90s, late 80s. But um, I would just love to see a little bit more impact, a little bit more flash. I believe he had one hurry, if you want to call it, or one pressure on Zach Claros there in the game. But other than that, he really hasn't flashed or really hasn't shown much. And I think that's, hampering the Lions and probably is a bigger concern that the Lions really didn't do much to, replace Matthew Betts, obviously. Woody Barron leaving in the offseason, I believe the Lions cut him. And then they also cut David Menard off the edge as well. And, Pete Robertson had a pretty good start to the season. I want to say he had 3 or 4 sacks to start the year. Josh Archibald, obviously, was leading the league in sacks before the bye week. I think Jake Serezna has surpassed him now. But really not doing much up front. Sione Tema got his first 2 sacks last week, but if you're getting your first 2 sacks in 2 weeks ago, week 7 before the bye week, yeah, Sione's definitely affecting the game, and I don't want to discredit Sione because I'm a big fan of Sione, and I've said it on this podcast, numerous weeks of, Sione didn't get the stat sheet, but he's making an impact with his pressures and stuff like that, which I still agree with, but he's not the game changer, I guess, is probably the way to put it, that Matthew Betts, which is hard to say because, he's a guy that's in the NFL now with an opportunity like that. So, no knock on Sione. I think he's still a hell of a player, but it's just tough because the Lions weren't able to fill that void. And then they also lost David Menard, who filled in, or who also had chipped in with, I want to say, double-digit sacks as well, maybe 8 or 9 sacks. I want to say it was 10 sacks last season. So not able to, get the sacks there. Sacks are down in the CFL, but just overall, I think it would help the secondary a little bit more. It would, help the defense as a whole. The backers as well, just because of maybe putting them in better positions to be playmakers, stuff like that. So just tough from the defensive line and Christian Covington especially. And it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to get better in that department. So um, a few other things, I guess, offensive line change. So I guess we'll get into the few changes into the game. Keelan Hatcher, obviously, his return. We'll talk about him in a second. Nathan Cherry returned to the lineup after tearing his ACL last year in Saskatchewan. Didn't really notice Nathan much at all. Once again, hard to really see those big guys in the middle of the defense getting kind of blocked out by the edge rushers. All the big mess there in the middle. So happy for Nathan, and he was playing some really good ball there before he got hurt. So I think he could be a valuable piece for the Lions if he's able to return to his previous form. And we also had Michael Couture slide back into the lineup and start at center for Tyler Packer, who slid to left guard. Chris Slugger came out of the lineup, which I thought was a bummer. I think he, connects with VA. VA really likes him quite a bit, and that shouldn't be the reason why you're starting by any means. But he has played well. I think he brings an edge that Moj and Julio talked about as well to the game that I think the Lions are missing. And I don't want to say it's you know it has really a big impact, but I want to say it does have an effect. I would think on maybe some of the lack of success that the Lions offense had tonight, with just not having a familiar face there. It's been 6 weeks. I know it's kind of flown by now since we've had Michael Couture and David now will go on the 6-game injury list. Might even be 7 weeks with the bye week. So been a while since they've adjusted. I feel like pretty well without them. So it's definitely different. And I think we saw the sacks here tonight. 4 for the Winnipeg Bluebombers, 0 for the BC Lions. So quick shout out to Andrew Harris if he's still listening. I see he's tuning in on Instagram. Appreciate you for tuning in, Andrew, and appreciate all you for all you do for me, for giving me opportunity working with the team, all that stuff, and everything you're doing for the VI Raiders. I'm excited to watch the boys this year doing really good things. Especially big shout out to Coach Sean Rabsky. I think he's also doing some big things for the squad as well. So let's get back into some of my likes, dislikes before we talk about the big, I guess, kind of reason why I wanted to get on the post-game show here tonight. We will end with, Vernon Adams. And like I mentioned before, this does not discredit anything that Vernon Adams has done this season. I still feel like he is the MLP frontrunner without a doubt. Just I feel like it's all about consistency, and that's something me and Blake have went back and forth a little bit on. I know VA or Blake loves that, loves Vernon Adams, and I do too. I think he's a great quarterback. I really do. I think these stretches comes with every quarterback, whether you're Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, with Josh Allen, with anybody, with Zach Collaros. We've seen it here through the first 8 games of the year. Zach has his first game, first, I would say, good game of the season. Obviously, it had to come tonight versus the BC Lions, but this is going to happen. Now, that being said, I think the consistency issues creep up when they are, in big games, when they have their back against the wall. I think Calgary, you can kind of chalk that up to a one-off situation. I think this situation, there's a little bit of heat on Vernon Adams, like I kind of downplayed somewhat, which I didn't I disagreed with Shane's take of being a must-win game. But going into the game, Vernon Adams is definitely feeling the pressure of Winnipeg. This is the team that has knocked us off the last 2 years. I want to say outside of the shutout game week 3 last year, like they really haven't had much success going into Winnipeg offensively. So that starts to creep in, whether you like to admit it or not. And then I think just it being a bigger game, right? People starting to talk about, are the Bombers, dead, all this stuff. Can Vernon Adams keep up this MLP, pace still? All these things, I think, start to creep in, and then you're sitting on the bye week. You start to even listen to those things a little bit more. So, curious to see how Vernon Adams responds if he's able to return from injury. Now, that being said, I might get a little bit messy if that's what you want to call it here, but I'm going to do so because, you know, talked about it last night on the weekly show with Shane, Coach, and Blake. If you guys aren't aware about the weekly show, I know, as you can see below, every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock Pacific time, Blake, Coach, and Shane and I go live here on the Canadian Football Fanatics Instagram or YouTube, wherever you're tuning in, as well as the 13th Man Sports Facebook page, where we go live every week, talk about, news notes, recap a little bit of last week's action, as well as go through this week's action, give our picks, stuff like that. Asked Coach, asked Shane, asked Blake where they thought Nathan Rourke would go if he returned to the CFL. I believe we had some Winnipeg in there. I believe we had Toronto in there. I think there was maybe a nod to Hamilton potentially, depending on maybe if Bo's sticking around long term. I know I believe Nathan's from the Hamilton area or Hamilton region, Ontario for sure. We're gonna claim him as our own, as I believe born in Vancouver Island, but I think he probably considers Ontario a little bit more home than Vancouver Island. I believe he left here at an early age, grew up more so in Ontario. So maybe I don't exactly remember what part it was, but I believe it was Hamilton. Toronto tossed that around there. Winnipeg, which I thought would be an interesting spot. Now that sure sounds maybe a little foolish after tonight. Now it is one game, but I think what they more so meant was long term taking over for Zach Laros after he kind of rides off into the sunset. Winnipeg would be a good option, which I agreed with. Now that being said, I did not give a response. I don't know if they noticed that or not, because we were getting a little bit long in the segment, and I did not want to give my answer because it would have made the segment go even longer. I will be 100% with you. I will be 100, as the kids say. Um, I have my doubts that the Lions will just let Nathan Rourke go to CFL free agency if he was to return. I have some, I would say I'm about 50-50 right now that number one, Amar Doman would, you know, it would pique his curiosity because of what he knows Nathan Rourke has brought, how he played when he was here in BC. Um, I think the conversations would creep in with Amar Doman. They would leak into Neil McAvoy and Coach Campbell, and then from there is then the floodgates open from there. Once you're at that point, I feel like it's maybe at the point of no return. Now that being said, it's not going to be an easy one because Vernon Adams is under contract for a few years. I want to say till 2026, could be 2025 if I'm not mistaken. If anybody's in the chat that knows for sure, please let me know. Nathan Rourke. I don't want to say it had. I believe Glenn Suter touched on a little bit, or just, might not have been Suter. Could have been the panel after the game. Touched on a little bit of Nathan is putting pressure maybe on the organization / Vernon Adams of he was on he came to the Saskatchewan game a few weeks ago. Got to go on the broadcast. He said pretty much he's if I return to the CFL, I want to come back to family. I want to come back to the BC Lions. Is not, bending the quote by any means. It's pretty much quote for quote what he said. Now that being said, the Lions have kind of moved on, so that's where things get a little bit messy, a little bit tricky. How do you work that situation is, a little bit beyond me because I'm just not, I don't know if my lack of CFL knowledge or CFL history is kind of handicapping me here, I guess, a little bit. Yeah, so Q-Man, I know he says here, Vernon is easily tradable under market contract, leading passer. My question is if you're the Lions, do you just so what I was going on there, Q-Man, is without kind of having a lot of CFL history, behind me of have we really seen a trade like this go down before of in an era like this where, things are a little bit talked about more with social media, stuff like that. So I feel like that would drive up the price of a Vernon Adams a little bit more. Does the BC Lions just let him walk for, peanuts, considering, like you say here, right? Leading passion in the CFL. I think it is not a shot at Vernon Adams that the Lions and personally myself would pick Nathan Rourke over Vernon Adams. He's in the NFL. Look what he did when he was here. Um, you know, he's a great player. Vernon Adams is a good player. I think it's kind of where things come down, and personally, why I would welcome back Nathan Rourke with open arms. Now it just gets so tricky because of the contract situation, stuff like that. What would happen with Vernon Adams there? Thank you, Dave. Puts in the chat here. He says VA contract till 2026. Um, so that gives us 2025-2026 season. I believe personally, I think Nathan signed with Atlanta this today. Um, don't love that. Uh, they signed Kirk Cousins to the $100 million contract. They drafted Michael Penix, and then they have Taylor Heineke, who I'm a big fan of. I see a lot of similarities in Taylor Heineke and Nathan Rourke's game. Now that being said, he is a veteran who has already been in the building, has the one leg advantage. So Nathan's gonna have to make his impression in preseason and do it in a limited amount of snaps, which is going to be difficult. Now, I think Nathan is going to exhaust all NFL opportunities, like everybody that has a brain, I guess, has said. I know a lot of people are getting excited about him returning this season. I don't think that is going to happen whatsoever. I think he's going to try to, stick it this season, go into next OTA / mini camp / training camp with, a goal in mind to get in a training camp or just get on a team with some stability. I think if it doesn't happen then that's where we could see him return, 2025 summer, something like that, which would kind of put things a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of BC being able to sign him. Now, that being said, Keyman says Calgary, Edmonton, Hamilton, and Ottawa would all have interest. I gotta disagree with Ottawa. I think they are, and that's not me personally. But um, I think for the Ottawa Red Blacks organization, I think they're comfortable with Drew Brown as of now. They just brought him over from Winnipeg. I think he's played pretty well. They're 5-2, so I think Ottawa's probably out of the question. But Calgary, I could see with Jake Maier having some questions. Edmonton for sure. I think Trey Ford's out of there after the season. MBT, I think he's under contract for another season, but. I think all this Vernon Adams, trade talk is more so for 2025. If this is tough conversation to have because it all is if, ands, or buts here. And I actually see my guy Braden Hester Waddell. Shout out to Braden 2K in the Instagram chat. He says Vernon to Calgary would be nice with a laughing emoji. Calgary, I feel like, is a quarterback away, man. I like their defense. With Cam Judge, Mike Alway leading those guys in the middle of the defense. Not the greatest, defensive line, but I like their secondary. I like their weapons. I think they have a nice two-stable back 1-2 punch in the backfield, and I think Jake Maier's lack of pushing the ball downfield hurts them more often than not. And I've been the book has been out on Jake Maier for me for the last I'd say year and a half for basically as long as I've been doing the podcast. So I would like to see Vernon Adams going to Calgary, not for a Lions perspective, but from a CFL perspective, I would love to see him go to Calgary. I think that would be a good fit. See him go, get paired with some of those receiving weapons there. But it just brings me to say, to kind of finally end, yes, finally, kind of put a bow on this, I guess, if you will. If Nathan Rourke is wanting and pretty much calling out to come back home, he's saying to come back to family, is what he said on the broadcast. You do so. You make him the highest paid CFL player of all time. I understand it sounds like a absolute cutthroat decision. It sounds like a maybe to some people an idiotic decision. Um, but to me, you go with the real deal. Not saying that Vernon Adams can't lead a team to a Grey Cup. I really think he could very well lead the team to a Grey Cup this season, which could throw an even bigger wrench into things if Nathan Rourke wants to come back. That if VA goes to lead them to a Grey Cup at home, I don't know if anything if there's anything Nathan Rourke could do then. At that point, I would think the ship has sailed, and you're going to have to start looking somewhere else if you want to come back to the CFL. And I think that would be about what does it. But that being said, there's no doubt in my mind that Nathan wants to come back. He's coming back to BC Lions games. He's going into the locker rooms. He's breaking down the team. Um, I'm very curious. We haven't seen any footage of um, you know Nathan with VA, anything like that. So curious to see how that relationship is, and a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. I understand that, but it has to be said. I feel like this is a big time talking point, especially on a night like this, and not a lot of things to talk about. If Nathan Rourke was to come back, do the Lions pull the trigger? I don't think this is a conversation to be had this year. I think this is a conversation to quickly be had tonight, and you put it to bed until 2025, until Nathan was to be cut. I think next training camp, something like that, and then he officially says, I want to come back to the CFL. I think VA is the leader of this franchise, the guy that has been basically given the keys to drive this car to the Grey Cup this season. And I think if he's not able to do that, yes, he signed the contract. But as Q-Man says here, I believe it's only $400K. He took below market or he took below market, as he said up there early in the chat as well. He I want to say McLeod with Thompson's had $500K there later in the offseason. So I would be super curious to see what happens. But that is a discussion for another day. I think it was just a good time to finally explain myself why I didn't answer last night on the show, give my 2 cents, and move on from there. So let's get out game balls here quickly before we get out of here, guys. Game balls. Now, gonna be tough. I'll be honest, guys, to give out a game ball on a night like this. Couldn't even give it to Sean White because he didn't kick any field goals. I'm going to go a little bit unique on this one. It might be a shock to some. I'm going to go with, not because of, blew me away, anything like that. Q-Man says no one, which I kind of agree with. I'm going to give a game ball to someone who started his first game. That was BC Lions' third-round pick, Christophe Beaulieu, who I thought made a few nice plays. A couple nice open field tackles on Brady Oliveira that saved a touchdown, one saved a first down that forced a punt there early on in the game that I thought was maybe a play that could spark the team or just spark a little bit of anything, which didn't end up happening. Now, Glenn Cedar did touch on the broadcast of, he thought one play, I believe, was his fault, which I thought was a little bit, I disagreed with. He says, geez, what a homer pick. Well, yes, David, that's because this is the BC Lions post-game recap show. If it was a CFL recap show, we, of course, give the game ball to maybe, I would say Zach Collaros, maybe someone on the defense, trail forward to an interception, obviously. Don't remember what Brady Oliveira's final stat line was. I know he was effective once again. If I was to give it a game ball to anybody, would probably be the Bombers' defense because of what they were able to do, shut out Vernon Adams in that offense. I think Zach Close had himself a good game, but only throwing one touchdown pass. I think he was just under 295 yards, but very efficient. Don't think a lot of balls touched the ground here tonight for the Bombers offense. So that's why I would lean Zach Collaros, but I would say the Bombers defense should get one if we were to give game balls, to the game, I guess you could say. So to get back to the Lions game balls, I'm going to give it to Christophe Beaulieu just because first start in the CFL, thought he made a couple impact plays. I thought it was bogus for Glenn Suter to kind of touch on one of the plays that, he thought he made a mistake on. And I'm curious to see how he's going to be able to stay in the lineup. I think he did enough to, make a little bit of an impact. I know it sounds kind of, um, it sounds like I'm grasping at straws here on 25-0 loss, but I really think this is someone that they've been high on all offseason. They've really talked him up pretty highly, and I really think this is arguably the safety of the future paired with Adrian Green, who are going to be kind of the two Canadians in the secondary for years to come. A guy I've been super high on. I know for those that have been following along, a player that I kind of featured, I believe before the draft, before the Lions selective, actually before, yes, because I did it on him and George Una, as well as a couple other guys guys that I thought would transition pretty well to the CFL game. I think Christoph's done that pretty well here so far. Special teams wise, he was able to step into the starting lineup here tonight and making a little bit of an impact. So we're gonna, give him a game ball here tonight. I feel like nobody else deserved it other than him. So that'll pretty much end things here tonight. Was a tough one, folks. We still made it 45 minutes, though. Wasn't sure if we were going to make it an hour. It was not sure how long we are going to go personally after, we the final score there after the clock hit 0. But we made it. We talked about basically everything. Tough one for the Lions. 42 minutes time possession for the Winnipeg Bluebombers to 18 for the BC Lions. 74 yards passing for VA. They being the BC Lions, drop to 5-3, while the Winnipeg Bluebombers creep back into contention, folks. 3-6. I have not written them off once. I finally admit that maybe they're dead last night on the post-game show. And this is what they do to me. They spank the BC Lions 25-0. And I think show that, the Bombers, what I've been saying all year long, for anybody that's been following along on the CFF Weekly, as long as Zach Collaros, Brady Oliveira, and Mike O'Shea are in a Bombers uniform or hat, polo, whatever you want to call it on the sideline, the Bombers will have a puncher's chance. That's there's no one better. There's not a better three-headed monster than a coach, quarterback, and whatever you want to call it, an offensive weapon, running back, whatever you want to say. A guy like Brady Oliveira, who I know people kind of maybe were, he started the season quiet. He was hurt a little bit. People maybe have forgotten. I feel like it hasn't been talked about. Leading the CFL in rushing coming into this week, doing his thing. He would be, I feel like, talked about a little bit more if he didn't have a monster season last year. And, a guy that's going to be well over 1,000 yards once again this year is the straw that really stirs that offense, I think. As long as they had those two, I think the Bombers are going to be a problem in the West Division. I think a team that the second seed doesn't want to see. So I think it's important for BC to make sure they hold on to the first seed, make sure Saskatchewan has to take out Winnipeg and force them to go the long way instead of having to take them out there in the first round and having to see them right away, because I think they're a team that they have their pedigree. Their pedigree has already been earned through the previous 4 or 5 years here, getting to the Grey Cups, winning Grey Cups, all that sort of stuff. So I think the Bombers are going to be a pain in the ass, unfortunately, if you're the BC Lions, if you're a BC Lions fan. But that will pretty much wrap things up for the BC Lions post-game show here tonight, folks. I want to relax, get some sleep, head to bed before I got to get up and work one last day before the long weekend. I hope everybody enjoys August long. Enjoy some CFL action. I know I'm going to enjoy a little bit of CGFL on Saturday as well. Looking forward to watching the Riders Edmonton game on Saturday. But my Raiders playing up in Kamloops Saturday night as well. A few other good matchups. Pat made our picks last night. I know Wizard Takes, if he's watching, will post them on the Instagram. We'll post, I guess, my picks as well as the other three on the in the little group chat there on his page tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. And it should be another good weekend of Canadian football, folks. You know what it is. But unfortunately, they are coming to an end here quickly as we had some NFL action here tonight. The Hall of Fame game, first NFL game of the season here kicked off the season. Basically a matter of time before we have, games on Fridays and Saturdays, and Thursdays and Sundays are no more, which I kind of enjoy. Thursdays and Sundays. I enjoy Sundays. Well, I enjoy Sundays when it's not NFL. Unfortunately, no side of the CFL. Love the CFL game now, especially the last few years. But when it's NFL Sunday, there's nothing more I love doing than, red zone all day, watching my Bills and watching Sunday night football. Save the CFL for Saturday nights because not the biggest fan of college football. Give me Friday night football all night long. And Thursdays, I feel like Thursdays in the NFL, you could really rival that. I think it's hit or miss. Some of those games are pretty brutal on Thursday nights, and I think you could play a few in the fall there and try to rival the NFL and get pretty decent, television numbers. I know TSN airs the games as well on Thursday nights, I believe, or maybe not. That could have moved to Prime, so maybe it's not on TSN as well. So I think another avenue. I know they go away from it, but another opportunity that I think they could play on Thursday night as well. So before we get out of here, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. All the support has been greatly appreciated. We are up over 215 subscribers on the YouTube channel. We are up close to or we have over actually 800 followers on the Instagram. I don't remember the exact number on the Twitter page, but as always, follow us on Twitter @_CF Fanatics. We are on Instagram @Canadian Football Fanatics, no spaces, no capitals. You can find us on YouTube @Canadian Football Fanatics. Subscribe to the channel. When you guys do, please hit the notification bell so you guys will get notified every time we post any sort of content, whether that be, a video, like my power rankings, which will drop on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. Like some of the YouTube shorts that I was putting out this past week of some of the footage I was capturing at the Raiders games, or live shows like these. The CFF Weekly Show on every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock sharp, and our BC Lions post-game recap show after every BC Lions game the rest of the season. Last update from me before we get out of here. You can catch Blake and I from now on. The weekly show has changed slightly to a more CFL Central type show. We're going to cut out basically any sort of Lions focus and focus more on a CFL perspective. Blake and I will do a 20 or 30-minute video every week previewing the Lions' upcoming game and release it on the day before the game. So the morning before, the day before the Lions play, whether today this week would have been we would have uploaded it Wednesday. Was ironing out the plans with Blake, so we weren't able to do it this week. We will start that next week. Just transitioning the weekly show, all that sort of stuff. So we will start that next week. So look forward. I believe the Lions play on Sunday, so look forward to that to drop on Saturday. Blake and I will try to get that out to you. Quick 20-minute, 30-minute video previewing the BC Lions upcoming game versus the Edmonton Elks. So until then, like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, all that good stuff is greatly appreciated, and we will see you guys Wednesday night. Have a good weekend, everybody, and enjoy the Canadian football.